Practice makes perfect, they say. So welcome third time to our right now starting session about anonymous analytics in practice. My name is Mikko Piippo.
And I am Lotta Holm.
And we are both consultants at Hopkins in Helsinki. We've been working with Piwik PRO now for several years. I think we are partners since 2020. And during the last 6 months, I think we've been creating a couple of analytics implementations that are anonymous analytics. But let me start from the background. What are the challenges we have been trying to solve with anonymous analytics and Piwik PRO? Well, first of all, in several client cases, marketing managers and their stakeholders in client organizations demand marketers to provide them something they call bulletproof numbers. So they don't want to hear anything about problems in data. They want to know exactly how many sessions there were, how many conversions there were, and so on. Of course, we as analytics professionals know that it is something that is basically impossible to get. But in practice, I have found it impossible to educate all the stakeholders about challenges we encounter with standard traditional analytics implementation methods. So our clients have several issues. They demand bulletproof numbers. Second, it's pretty much impossible to get anything resembling bulletproof numbers because most of the time, or especially in these two cases I've been working with in the last couple of months, my client didn't know the consent rate. So they don't have a clue about how much data they were missing. And what follows from this is that whenever they see a report that states that some metrics are going down, they don't know if it's consent rate that has been changing, or if people have been installing new ad blockers, or if their marketing team has done something wrong, or if the market is just performing badly at the moment. Next, the client have problems because they don't have a single source of truth. In reporting, they have had to mix data from advertising platforms and analytics platforms. And of course, ad platforms have data for all ad impressions and all clicks, but traditional analytics implementation just for those users that consent with the tracking. So clients have all kinds of different numbers, and their stakeholders don't really, unfortunately, get it, that it's impossible to get bulletproof numbers in 2024. Most of our case description here is for one company which mostly does lead generation, advertising, and demand generation campaigns, and it's a pretty big B2B services company. And for them, like I mentioned, we implemented Piwik PRO's anonymous tracking. What does this mean in practice? Well, let's start from the basics. First of all, we use Piwik PRO tracking for all visitors, regardless of consent status. So no matter if the users accepted cookies or not, we did anonymous tracking with Piwik PRO. For consenting users, our client uses another analytics platform. So basically they have now two different analytics implementations, one tracking all visitors in the same way, and the other one all visitors in the same way, but the consent state is different for these two analytics platforms. Uh, for Piwik PRO, we decided not to use any cookies. That is, of course, critical when doing anonymous tracking. Instead, we used session hash for combining hits into sessions. So this provides us a pretty good data about number of sessions and most traditional metrics we need. In addition, we removed dozens of URL parameters from Piwik PRO. Basically, any URL parameter that could somehow identify a user, even if we don't have a way to map those identifiers ourselves in some cases with real existing persons. For example, GCLID, Facebook click ID, the same for Yahoo, Bing, all kinds of HubSpot identifiers and so on. So in this way, we created pretty anonymous data for all visitors using client-side tag managers. It would of course be possible to still improve the level of anonymity by using server-side tag manager, where we could reduce the data available for Piwik PRO further. So now we have in Piwik PRO most important data for our client. We've got session data. Visitors can be geolocated on a country level. Conversions can be attributed to the last click source. But on the other hand, for example, returning visitors are not identified as such, and it's impossible to get any user-level metrics that would combine data from different sessions. So because of this, we are using only last click attribution for all the conversions. But I don't think this is such an issue for this client, because most of the advertising anyway is direct response advertising for acquiring new leads, getting people to register to webinars, and so on. And then, of course, the important question: is this compliant? Is this solution GDPR safe? Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Also, in this case, the ID came from our client's marketing management. They wanted to know if there's any way to collect anonymous data so that we could have something for all visitors. With the help of Piwik PRO, we explained or wrote an explanation of how the data is being collected, what kind of data is collected, what data is removed, how the data is being stored, and where it's being stored. And then the company's data protection officer finally approved the ID and presented it to the upper management. I think it was basically a C-level decision in the company. So whatever you do, don't do any decisions yourself. Create an explanation and documentation for what you are doing, and let the management decide how to go on. Staying practical, the setting up anonymous tracking with Piwik PRO was quite easy. It can be done with user interface. We just set up, for example, the option to use session hash. We turn off visitor cookies. We turn on complying with the CNIL guidelines, hoping that also the Finnish data protection authorities would accept these guidelines if asked. And then we added also the option don't collect visitor device data. So this is also interesting because it stops reading screen resolution and browser plugins from the visitor device without consent, and this helps, or actually this makes it even more difficult to use the raw data for separating users based on their browser data. But of course, this as such is functions only if we also do our own cleaning. So we have to clean and mask the IP addresses. In this case, we decided that level 2 masking is good enough. So 2 first octets shouldn't be enough for identifying anyone. And for location data, unmasked IP addresses are still used. Well, here it would be possible to also change the setting for not collecting data using unmasked IP addresses, but just masked IP addresses. And finally, here is an example of our own exclusion of URL parameters. This screenshot is actually from our own website, not from any client website. And here you see that we have tried to exclude every possible identifier that can be found in the URL or page path reports. And so there should be nothing that would let us or anyone else, for example, Piwik PRO's people, to identify any users. The data is not being integrated with HubSpot or Salesforce, and all the advertising click IDs have also been removed from the data. So now, what kind of data did we actually get?
Well, we got some really interesting data. Here's the same client that Mikko was talking about earlier, and as he said, they are mainly collecting B2B leads on their website. In this summer, we implemented the anonymous version of Piwik PRO. Before that, we had like a regular setup for it, and you can see in the graph that comparing Google Analytics 4 to the Piwik PRO numbers, they were more or less the same up until the start of July, when the switch was made for Piwik PRO. After we implemented this anonymous Piwik PRO, the numbers started rising they rose for Piwik PRO remarkably, so that after the change, actually Piwik PRO captured a traffic amount that was 3 times as big as the one that Google Analytics did, or does still. There's one big peak, and let me get back to that a couple of slides on. But when it's business as usual, you can see from the purple line that it's about 3 times as big as the orange line, which denotes GA4. And this is due to the fact that there are really many people who don't consent to any tracking, and those are not captured by the Google Analytics setup, but with this anonymous Piwik PRO setup, we can capture them, we can calculate them, we know where they are coming from geolocationally, and we get the last click attribution.
And actually the client believed that they are losing just something like 30% of traffic.
Yeah, but in effect they were keeping a third and losing 2/3. So yes, please, next slide. Okay, so the obvious benefit here is a better understanding of the traffic size, but also of the traffic sources. And one good thing to realize here is that the cookie consent varies really a lot between the different traffic sources, and this impacts the results that you see. So if you compare here the Piwik PRO pie chart, which shows this is actually for July and half of August before that high peak, so that it would not impact. So if you compare this pie chart for Piwik PRO, you see that actually the majority of the traffic coming to the site comes from PPC, and then organic, and then direct. But if you would have a look at the Google Analytics numbers on the right hand side, you'd see that PPC so to say, only stands for 5%. So here is like a huge difference in what you would attribute to the different kinds of campaigns and paid advertising you do. There's obviously also differences in the other pieces here in the slices, but the main thing to take away from this slide is that you will see this kind of differences. This is for this one B2B client. It might be different for your company, but still you are like trying to navigate in the dark if you only use some kind of analytics who is relying on the concentrate. And the sizes here of the charts are such that the Google Analytics chart is smaller, as it actually captures a smaller part of the traffic. But when we get the entire traffic tracked by using Piwik PRO, then we get more traffic, and we get, first and foremost, we get accurate data on where the people are coming from. So this tells a really different story depending on which of these two tools you are looking at. Let's get to the next slide. Great, thank you, Mikko. And then to the peak, which might look like an anomaly. Well, it's actually not an anomaly per se, because the client wanted to run this quite big campaign in the end of August to try to get more leads to their site. The marketing team added a lot of money at the marketing, and of course we also saw this effect in the analytics. Again, the orange line here is for Google Analytics, and the purple one is from Piwik PRO. It's just a piece of the previous graph that you saw. And here, if you would look at only the Google Analytics data, you would have a story telling you that, okay, the traffic peaked here at 7,800 sessions on August the 28th, and we had a few days there, more or less 2 weeks, with this kind of amount of sessions, and that the campaign brought approximately 40,000 visits here in total. But when you look at the Piwik PRO version of the story, where you capture all the data, we actually can see that the amount of data was much, much bigger, and that the campaign actually brought about 180,000 visits in total. And now at this point, I can tell you that we have scrambled the numbers a bit, but the shape of the graph is intact. So yeah, but just to also keep the customer anonymous here. Yeah, please. So what this campaign findings were that we actually showed we got the actual effect of the campaign from Piwik PRO. Not from Google Analytics, which of course was the expected result as well, since that's the entire idea of having the anonymous Piwik PRO there, to see how much traffic we actually get and from where. But this also enabled us to calculate true conversion rates for the different traffic sources, and also to attribute the correct amount of effect to the correct source. And then, of course, depending on these results, the client was able to then alter their mix, how they should be advertising and which kind of an effect. Into this, of course, also came analyzing the quality of the data, the quality of the traffic that they got, and we could see that some of those campaigns actually had targeted geographical areas which were less important to the customers. So now they also got some learnings in that way on how to do their future campaigns. Yes, so Mikko.
Okay, so what did the client finally get? Well, first of all, our client's marketing managers finally have data they can understand, and they can also report to management. So they don't have to explain every time that this data is not trustworthy and that this data doesn't really describe the reality. So for the first time in 5 years, they have some numbers, some metrics that they understand and they can report. Just as a reminder, that data protection officer was quite okay with the documentation provided by us and Piwik PRO. So they were happy with how everything was collected, how everything was implemented, and where the data is being stored and how it's stored. And finally, the third group, all the advertising specialists were also happy as they now have at least last click attribution for all the conversions, and they don't have to calculate conversions from 3-4 different advertising platforms and hope that they somehow match with reality and there's no double or triple counting of conversions. So I think at the end of the day, everyone was quite happy with the result of this experiment, and this is something that we've been now suggesting also to some of our other clients.
Yes.
So I think we still have a couple of minutes time to chat. Please present your questions in the app's chat, and then we will be able to answer your questions.
Yes. Thank you.